Recorded live on the turf at Mad Lab Training Studio in Eldersburg, Maryland. This is the Time to Win podcast with Alex and Dan. Now let's get this podcast started.
So, Dan, here we are once again at the illustrious Turf Studio at Mad Lab Performance.
Hell yeah.
And I guess what I want to do, first of all, is get a couple shout-outs out of the way because, everybody loves to get a shout-out, but nobody wants to listen to us talk for 40 minutes to hear a shout-out, right? So
true.
I thought I'd throw one out there and see where it goes, right? So I like going to What a Day Cafe, right? But I also, and we've shouted out to What a Day a couple of times. The food is great, the service is great, the attitude is awesome, the vibe, you can see it in the air. But another place I really like going is the French Twist down in downtown Sykesville.
Oh, with Elaine.
Yeah. And so she's awesome, and the kids that work there are awesome. And, I don't go down there every day, but, when I want to prep, I go down to the French Twist, right?
I created a lot of Mad Lab while I was in the French Twist.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
I would go there and do my work down there, and Elaine would come over, bring free samples to me, and be like, hey, I started working on this, try this.
Wow.
That was real cool. And I got to know a lot of the employees and stuff. Everybody was
Right.
super nice.
Right.
Coffee's great. So, yeah, great place, for sure.
It is something of Alliance Française, like a French affiliate, a French ally.
Pamplemousse.
Right? Pamplemousse, right. Grapefruit, huh?
That is a grapefruit.
Yeah.
That's about my extent of my French, I'd say.
You're doing pretty good then.
Thanks, buddy.
That's more than most people have. So, Dan, you got any shout-outs you want to throw to this morning?
I'd like to shout out one of my friend's companies. My friend Matt Bennett owns Bennett Industries. You need anything done, anything. You need a wall taken down. You need to corral some cattle, fence put up, body buried. No, I'm just kidding about that. Is this a real company? It's not. It used to be. It isn't anymore. I don't know why Bennett Industries popped in my mind. It's one of Bob Kennedy's good friends, one of my good friends.
Okay.
I think he is doing works at a moving company, and he owns a rental property down in Florida.
Nice. Those are good friends to have,
I don't know why I decided
right?
to bring him up.
So it reminds me of an ad that I read in the classifieds once, right? Once upon a time, way back when, you would get the news on a piece of paper that you could pick up at a box, or they would even deliver it to your home sometimes. It was called newspaper, right? And we don't really do newspapers anymore. It's kind of quaint, I always call it the dead tree version.
The dead tree version.
But there was a rag called the City Paper. I don't know if it still exists or not, but it was sort of an alternative press. You'd find out what shows were playing and things like that. There was a classified ad there back in 1981 or something, and it simply said this: "I will do anything for $100." I never called the guy, but
Dash Mike Hamilton.
They were right. Okay. Or Bob Kennedy.
Or Bob Kennedy.
Or it was the other guy that you just shot.
Matt Bennett. Bennett Industries.
So
I worked for Bennett Industries for a couple days, actually, when he was doing all the random stuff. And we did do a bunch of random jobs, so that did actually happen.
Yeah. So Dan, today is the Ides of March, right? It's 15th of March. Beware.
Beware.
Okay? And if you were to put a title on today's episode, I would encourage you to just call it Beware.
Beware. Okay? I like that.
In keeping with that, I have in my hand the clipboard of woe.
The clipboard of woe.
Beware.
Beware.
And on the clipboard of woe, I've got six topics that I'd like to discuss
I know
today.
You do. I don't know what these topics are, but Alex, as usual, has been hounding me about them all week, so my curiosity is an all-time high, which is difficult for Daniel to not poke and prod and try to figure out what they are, but I did not, and I was good once again, and we're on a hot streak here.
Yeah, and curiosity made Dan famous.
Dan something. that one might get Dan
Go ahead
in
and run
trouble.
with that.
Yeah, really.
Okay. So the first one is, before I start, is there anything you want to ask? Is there anything you hot on your mind? Because I feel like if I start going here, I'm just going to monopolize the conversation.
What is hot on my mind are these 6 topics. One in particular, I feel like you said, what was it? What did you say about it? there's no something about right answers or something.
Yeah,
It would
there's a
defy
lot.
all right answers or something.
This one is the simplest question of all, but it defies simple answers, right?
Okay.
So it's and I'm going to save that one for last.
That's
okay,
fair.
So I get you all wound up on 1 through 5.
I like that.
Number 1, is it evil to manipulate people?
Whew. That is a good question, because isn't everything that you do every day a manipulation of people for one reason or for another?
Right. I believe it is.
You believe it is evil?
No, I believe that we have hung a definition on the word manipulate that has a bad definition or bad connotation, right? It's a trigger word for a lot of people. Oh, I feel like you are manipulating me, right? Well, my mother used to manipulate me not to cross the street without looking both ways, right? Some people call it social engineering. But what do you think?
I think that just like anything else, taken to extremes or in different directions, it can become very evil.
Yeah.
For sure. But almost anything that way can become evil, I think.
So,
like, we manipulate people in here all the time.
Well,
not just literally, but also like we manipulate them to want to move better, to actually enjoy movement, and to like take their health seriously.
right.
And we're like, oh, it tricked you into being healthier. It's not.
Yeah.
I feel like that's got to be fairly positive.
Yeah, I think so too. Like persuade, right? Like manipulate carries this bad connotation, but Dan, I think you guys do a lot of persuasion, and we find ourselves doing that all the time. Like when we negotiate with a spouse, or when we're trying to make a point to a group of people that we're working with, or Dan, I feel like I am being constantly manipulated when I come to MadLab. Right? Because you say things to me that are going to get under my skin.
Oh, 100%.
And I know you do it, at least I think you do it on purpose, right? Like, do you think you could handle 90s, Alex? And I'm like, that appeals to my worst instincts. Like, oh, of course I can handle 90s.
Oh,
right?
I know.
Yeah, and I go with that, but you know that I can do it too, right?
For sure.
So
because I'll preface it and say, hey, do you think you can do this? And then I'll say, for real, do you think you can do this just because of how you're feeling today? And I think I even said that yesterday about something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Occasionally I will turn you down, right?
Yeah.
When my common sense gets the better of me. But
which is good. Then I know that we really shouldn't do that day.
Yeah. So maybe, it's kind of a setup question, right? Like I use the word manipulate, but when we talk about persuading people or reasoning with people, to try and deliver a behavior that we're looking for.
So I have a couple more things that have opened up on this, actually. Yeah. So one, I think that persuasion is a skill, right? And just like any skill, if it's really high level, it's almost like a power, right?
Totally.
And then once you have a certain power in something, I think that it's just like what we were talking about before. That's your strength. That's something that you're good at. You have a responsibility with that you have a responsibility not to use it badly, and you have a responsibility to use it to better the people around you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm a fairly persuasive person. Like, I've always been really good at sales and stuff like that. And I have in the past just done what I was told from management and be like, all right, here's how I should sell. It's about the numbers. And I've run into some issues that way that I did not think fit my personality, and I had to change the way that I did that stuff, right? And that's why our sales process at MadLab is as it is, so it's not like the way that I was told to sell when I initially came into personal training, right? But then I think that you do have a responsibility. Just because you can get somebody to do something doesn't mean you should, right? And everybody's got their other things going on. You have to try to be really empathetic and aware of those things and be like, okay, does this person need to do this, and should I push them to do this? Will that be for their benefit, and do I actually know that it is for their benefit? And that's a tough thing, because I think that can become really evil really fast. There was a real persuasive guy, one of the better salesmen in the world, not one of the better human beings by any means, but there was a guy named Hitler that was fairly persuasive, probably an excellent salesman. Probably not hitting the high mark of humanity there, and then a lot of really, really, really bad things happen because of it, right? So, and that's like the upper limit or lower limit, whichever one you want to call it,
Right.
of like it's an extreme example. However, that is where manipulation and persuasion can go as a strength.
Yeah, like I when we're here working together in the lab, I know when I'm being manipulated. At least I
think you do.
I think I do, right?
I'm sure you do.
But like I'm a professional skeptic, right?
Right.
I spent 35 years in the biz of paranoia and skepticism, right? We had a conversation before we went on the air about that. So I'd like to think that my threshold of manipulation is extremely high, right? Like I'm pretty sensitive to it. I also have this punk rock attitude and the punk rock background, and so my default is to be like wary and suspicious of pretty much everything that's going on around me.
That's
right?
fair.
So like I feel like I'm getting manipulated by social media, right? Like TikTok.
You are.
I don't know if you've heard me talk about the Chinese algorithm. And okay, right. So I use that term sort of, I don't know. It sounds kind of discriminatory, but like when I look at my phone and I start looking at reels, I get sucked in so fast.
It's real easy. Real easy.
And
it's
before
made
I know
that
it,
way.
like I know it's made that way, and I call it the Chinese algorithm, but it is a form of social engineering. And you said, I think, if I could paraphrase, you said, it's not evil to manipulate or persuade or encourage people to do certain things if the intent is good, right?
Well,
or if the end is like
the
something
result is good.
Yeah, the result.
Because
right.
somebody said one time, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I stand corrected.
And again,
yeah.
I'm sure Hitler had great intentions for the human race, and that did not seem to work out so well.
Okay. So
there's a lot that goes into that.
When I was studying the art of manipulation, I mean persuasion, they told me the minute somebody invokes the Third Reich, the discussion is over. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply that rule, and I'm going to move on to question number 2.
Question number 2, Mikey.
Okay. I learned a new word this week.
Oh, hell yeah.
And maybe it goes in with the theme, reductive.
Reductive, okay.
Right? And like I had read the word before, but I got real curious about it. I started asking myself, well, I don't really know what that means. So I looked it up, right? And the dictionary said, to be reductive is to present a subject or a problem in a simplified form, especially one that might be viewed as crude, right?
Okay.
Like, I don't know, Joe Biden is senile. Okay, or Donald Trump is senile. I don't know, right? That's sort of reductive, right? Like, there's more to it than that.
Or if like we're talking about my business, they'll be like, oh, at MATLAB they go in and they throw weights around for an hour.
Right, or fat people are lazy, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and I think like that immediately makes the hackles on my neck stand up, right? Like I get chafed a little bit when people say that. When they take a complex situation, they try and reduce it down to one line. Now, maybe that bothers me because I do it all the time myself, right? And I'm just transferring that onto other people.
Good.
But I learned that, and it really bugs me when people try and we talked about labels, right?
Yeah.
And then this is sort of like the follow on with labels. It feels like to me, like, here's a label. Let's just say, here's Alex. He's 62 years old. He's a little thick around the waist. He's probably a pretty lazy guy, right? And that's reductive thinking. Right?
That is reductive thinking.
There's a lot more to it.
Definitely not lazy.
Yeah, especially when it comes to eating and
Some
drinking.
days I feel like I have to be like, Alex, you got to be lazy today.
Yeah.
Like you almost have to like pull you back sometimes.
Yeah, well, yesterday was like that, and I want you to know that I actually was lazy for an hour or two, and then I got all wound up, and then I had to go out and like get the shovel and get the wheelbarrow and spend another 2 hours doing shovel and wheelbarrow work, right? Because that's just how I'm wired, right?
That's fair.
So I don't know. It was just on my mind, reductive, right? So, the listeners, probably everybody out there listening already knows the word reductive. But because the theme today is...
We do have a very intelligent viewership.
We do.
We actually took IQ scores from them.
Okay.
Yeah, average IQ is 188. That's the average.
Whoa.
I know.
Whoa, that's huge.
Yeah.
okay, being the natural skeptic, could I look at the data, please?
Oh, no. The data's
It's classified.
hiding somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it'll take hours and hours to find.
So since today's theme is beware, okay, so we've had two bewares.
Beware the things that I say, yes.
No. No. Okay, perhaps, right? That's not on the clipboard of woe today, but maybe it should be. Beware. Okay. So beware of manipulation, be sensitive to it, but recognize that not all manipulation or coercion or suggestion or encouragement or persuasion, not all of it is bad, right? But
suggestion, I like that word.
Don't be reductive. Beware of reductivism, okay? Beware of Dan.
Beware of Dan.
And now I've got a special bonus. Special bonus. It's not on the list, but I'd like to make a movie recommendation.
Okay.
Speaking of beware, have you seen the movie Beware of Mr. Baker?
No, I've never even heard of it.
Well, now you have.
Okay.
Right? So if we could get the stats guys that are in the background running all the stats and giving us the stats feed, write that down for an action item for Dan. See Beware of Mr. Baker. Okay. And here's the rest of the story. Right. Ginger Baker was the drummer for Cream and was famous for having a volatile personality.
Okay.
All right. In addition to being, like, in my mind, one of the greatest drummers of all time. Okay. So it's a super entertaining watch.
Is it who's involved in it? Was he involved in it, or was he or is it just like about him and he?
Oh, it's all about him.
And he knows it.
He knows it. It's like a sequence of interviews that these people did, and like he is rude and combative with the interviewers, and at one point attacks the person that's interviewing him, and he's just a super interesting personality. So we'll throw it out there. Special bonus, beware on the Ides of March. Beware. All right. Speaking of reductivism, right? I was down in South Carolina last week, and we were visiting some old friends down there. Actually, Agent B was visiting old friends, and I was kind of her driver. Okay. Right? And so the husbands were dismissed because the format of this was ladies' lunch, right? So we drove to Myrtle Beach for lunch. Okay.
For ladies' lunch.
Yeah, that's reductivism at its best. We drove to Myrtle Beach for lunch.
Yes.
It's technically true, but there's a lot more to it. So the ladies convene for their lunch, and the husbands are dismissed. And we sort of know each other a little bit. Like, I've known one of these guys. I've hung out with him like 2 or 3 times over 35 years. Okay. He's actually a professional golf player, and
that's pretty
he's a golf pro. He's super smart, but he's extremely laid back and humble. Okay. Until you get him on the golf course, then he'll cut your throat. Okay, he had a PGA Tour card.
Silent killer.
Yeah, he's a silent killer.
You like that phrase?
I do like that phrase. And my friend Rich is a silent killer. So we're there at lunch and we're talking, and inevitably the conversation turns to current events, and namely politics. And Rich asks me, "Well, how are you going to go this year? Are you gonna vote for Trump?" And
they're ready for war.
Not necessarily.
I feel like when somebody has questions like that, unless you know them really well, if it's a good friend and we're like just talking, and we're like, well, what do you think about whatever? Then that is like probably a curiosity question. Yeah. If you haven't seen somebody in forever or don't know them very well, and then you ask that fairly early on in a conversation, you're checking battle lines at that point.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So all of my suspicious spidey senses are tingling, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this could be really interesting. But I know Rich is a silent killer, okay? Right. And I know that there's more to this question than just how are you going to go. So I said to him, Rich, I actually don't like either guy. I am, here's where it gets weird. I am a registered Republican. I pretty much vote Democratic most of the time because I see myself as a social liberal. But I don't like either guy, right? I don't like Biden. I do think he's too old for the job. but maybe that's just me. I'm too old for the job, I think, right?
I'd vote for you. I don't think it's.
I would. Okay.
You know what? One of the recommend. I would say if you can't do this podcast, then you shouldn't be president. And neither one of those guys can do this podcast because we checked them out. They didn't pass the interview process, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't get past Mike.
So okay,
which
thanks,
is hard, but
thanks for the vote of confidence. I'll just remind you of William Tecumseh Sherman's famous quote: "If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve." I love that, and the guy was a redhead too, so famous Civil War general.
Yeah.
But Rich is probing, right? He's probing, and I'm like, I don't like either guy. So what am I doing? I'm not being manipulated. I am engaging in sort of not quite a battle of wits, but I'm like, I'm going to
sure.
talk. I'm going to go. You
guys are like prodding each other's defenses.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Creating defenses of your own.
So I said, I'm an issues guy, Rich. Okay, and from a prior podcast, that I like to be politically active, but I like to do it like at the level of Congress, right? Like I showed you a letter like one of the exchanges I had with Senator Cardin, and I explained this to Rich. I'm an issues guy, right?
Me too. Just look at my dating record.
We're not talking, Dan. I know you got issues, but I'm talking about something different.
I'm just kidding.
That was good. A little color to the commentary.
Tried.
So I'm like, Richie, I'm an issues guy, right? And so I am very interested in how Chris Van Hollen and Jamie Raskin and Ben Cardin are voting on things. I'm somewhat interested in where the governorship is going. But more than anything, I want to understand, where do my elected reps stand on issues? And I don't know. I don't trust that the president, whoever it is, can handle that. Okay, I think the job is way too big to be about just how I feel about an issue, right? So I'm explaining all this to Rich, and he's just sitting there taking it all in. And then he says, "Okay, that's a pretty good answer, Alex. What are you passionate about?" I said, okay, I'm passionate about mandatory STEM education, right? I'm passionate about energy independence. I'm passionate about voter registration, right? These are issues that are important to me. And, he looks at me, he goes, wow, okay, so you're not going to really answer my question, are you? And I said, I'm not. In fact, I'm...
Oh, he put it right down on the table.
And I said, and I won't, because how I vote is personal and private, Rich. Okay, but anyway, I thought it was fascinating because most of the time when I have a conversation with somebody about politics, it starts and stops with Biden versus Trump, right?
Yeah, black versus white. That's what it is.
All right.
It's never that, no gray areas.
Yeah, like my colleague Valentine, Sweet Valentine. Okay,
Sweet Valentine.
Sweet.
Wake up, sweets.
Wake up, sweets. Exactly.
Look at that memory.
Yeah.
Like a steel trap, Mikey.
So Sweets, he just harps incessantly on how Biden is unqualified for the job. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you feel about defense?
Right.
How do you feel about education? How do you feel about immigration? And he kind of stumbles on this a little bit. So I guess where I'm going with all this is beware of the silent killers, okay? Because there is a lot more going on behind those eyes and between those ears than anybody has any idea about.
For sure. That makes me want to do a shout out, actually.
Okay, hit it.
Guy that you called a silent killer.
Yeah?
Good friend Kyle Gavin. Good friend of Mad Lab. Kyle Gavin, realtor. We call him KGR. If you need a home bought or sold, if you're looking, if you need to sell your home and you're moving, whatever you're doing, you need to get a hold of Kyle Gavin. KGR will take care of you, for sure.
So Kyle, right. It would be very easy to be reductive and dismissive to a guy like Kyle.
For sure.
Because the first time I met Kyle, he walked in the gym, he said nothing. He was huge, and he was wearing fuzzy slippers. Right? I'm like, okay, this guy's like a musclehead, right?
I remember that. Actually.
And he's
done that twice, actually.
Yeah, yeah. And
Jules, I forgot my shoes. That's what he would say.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
But Kyle blew my mind because when Jules asked him, "What are we listening today to?" he said classical, and he queued up a classical playlist, and I was like, wow. there's a lot more to this guy than meets the eye, right? And then you and Jules have both vouched for the guy. And
he's a great dude.
So beware the silent killers.
Silent killers.
Like Kyle, like my friend Rich, the golf pro in South Carolina. Okay, here's one you can totally beware of. Dan, I can tell the future.
But what?
Dan,
what?
Did you hear what I said?
I did hear what
I
you
can
said.
tell the future. Like, I have, I've been able to predict the future for some years now. Right?
Well, give me let me get an example first, and then an explanation.
Okay. So I know one thing.
Okay.
And here's like there's some tools. Like, I don't just see visions playing in my mind, right?
All right.
I see patterns in data. Okay.
Do you see patterns in data or patterns in human behavior throughout history?
Yes. Yes, both.
Okay.
So what I know is that if we're getting a result today and we keep doing the same thing, we will almost always get the same result. Okay? So I have seen the future and it looks the same. Okay?
Okay.
Until we do something different.
For sure.
So, by the way, was that a controversial statement? Because I said, Dan, I could tell the future, and you didn't say anything. I hit you with a stunner or something.
You did hit me with a stunner. I was just stone cold out. I just didn't expect it to stop. It was like the time that you told me our human performance podcast with the drugs are great for sports and for humanity in general.
Right.
And then you were like, go. Yeah. And I was like,
okay, good. I'm gonna have to keep throwing some zingers.
I like them. Yeah.
So, and it's funny because I last week I sent you a news article. I don't know where it came from, but it was like something like Trump accuses Biden of being on performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
Because his speech was so good, his State of the Union speech, right? And I just thought, well, of course he's on performance-enhancing drugs. Biden's a smart guy, right?
Yeah, you'd be like, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
You're trying to run a whole country.
Nobody can do that on their own, right? That's impossible. It is. That's why you have this, millions of an army of millions to help you run the country.
And that's what makes me question the candidates all the time.
Okay.
Because I feel like almost no one would willingly do that unless propped up and pushed by other people, and then you just have to find out who those other people are. Right. And I don't think it's as simple as their own party. And so that's what always just puts me into confusion and whatever, not curiosity.
Disequilibrium?
Well, definitely disequilibrium about politics, but it also makes me look at it as a kind of a, at the higher levels, kind of like a shady pursuit.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take a contrarian opinion to that. I love politics. I think politics are awesome. I think politics are how we get stuff done. Right?
I agree with all of those things. I just think politicians at the highest level it's really difficult to trust any of them. Okay.
Let's table that, if you don't mind, because I mean, we could say beware of politicians.
Can we go back to the future thing real quick, and let me go on a quick rant?
Yeah, please.
Real quick. So, anybody that knows me knows that I have an issue with formal schooling, for sure. And I love academics, and I love learning, and I love research, and I love reading. I think all of those are great, and I think if you get a lot of people, whether they're like-minded or not, in the same room that are learned and they want to learn more, and they start to have discussion and arguments, and whether however loud or whatever it gets, I think all of that is good.
Yeah.
So let me preface it with all of that stuff. However, learning history in school, and you have to learn specific dates, I think and you're caught on these dates where if you don't get 1818 right or 1750 right, then you're losing grades. That's nuts to me. What should be taught and really honed in on would be the patterns in human behavior and why they're important. And then also how humans have evolved in the behavior or have not evolved in their behavior over a span of time. And then what to expect in the future with specifics of that behavior. That should be what is being taught. Not necessarily the specifics of this date or that date, right? And that drives me nuts.
You're spot on, Dan. In fact, you basically stole all of my thunder on the topic of seeing the future.
Jeez.
Okay.
I'm equal parts disappointed and elated.
Yeah, I know, right, Dan? You're an exceptionally capable seer. Seeing the future.
I do. Yeah, I know what
Right.
a seer is.
Well, let's see how well Alex can see in the future.
Okay.
You guys want to do any shout outs? Any more?
Wait, what's that? What? Are you tricking us? Is this a test? I would like to do a shout out.
I would too.
We're 30 minutes in.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Give you a shout out.
Okay, so
I'll finish it for you because I already know what you're gonna say.
you know,
I don't. I'm just kidding.
that's awesome.
I'm just kidding.
Well, then I don't need to say it, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, our listeners don't know the future.
No.
Only half of them do.
I'll tell you the future after the shout outs, okay?
Fair.
What I want to say is I want to give a shout out to the people behind the scenes. None of this podcast would be possible without the expert hands of producer Mike.
Oh,
behind the
producer
console.
Mike.
A guy that you'll rarely see on camera, but you will often hear, and you always know he's there. He's another one of the silent killers out there.
He does have the actual best radio voice of all of us, too.
He's pretty good.
It's
Yeah.
excellent. He wasn't on the radio before.
So
That was one of his jobs.
I'm not surprised, but I do want to say I want a special shout out to producer Mike, and I want to say thank you for all the work that you do behind the console. The podcast would not happen without you. So make the magic go. Thank you, Mike.
I would even go further and say Mad Lab wouldn't happen without him.
Okay.
So this guy is integral in everything that we do.
That's
So,
awesome.
amazing guy. Mike, can you do like a real, like a snippet of like one of your radio call outs or like whatever, like if you're calling for the
Hey, you groovy guys and groovy gals. It's time for those totally terrific top 10 tunes coming your way.
That's it, man. Look at
That's
that. It's
it.
Casey Kasem Jr.
He's a true professional every day, all day, all hours of the day. you
I
know?
love it.
Another true professional though,
Okay.
my friends at CNA Auto. Adam, the owner, amazing guy. All the people over there from Miss Kelly onwards, amazing people. Any help you need with your vehicle at any given time, brakes, tires, anything with the engine, small things like oil changes or any kind of like regular maintenance, they will help you out. They're honest, their prices are good, and they'll always take care of you with a smile on their face. CNA Auto, right across the street from Mad Lab Performance on Liberty Road in Eldersburg.
And hey, Adam, if you're listening to the podcast, all you have to do back for us is hit the subscribe button, buddy.
Oh, hit the
Okay?
sub button. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be one of the millions. Be one of the millions.
So the future, right? The future is highly predictable, right? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go on record as predicting a couple of things.
Cool.
I believe that disease, as we know it today, will be obsolete within 500 years. Okay.
Okay.
I can come back. We could do a whole podcast episode on that.
I would
okay?
like to because that is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to get more into that, but I
Yeah.
could see where you're going with that and why.
Okay. There's a lot of things that the future gets very muddy after we've eliminated disease. Okay. I don't quite know where we're going with that one. But you know, to predict the future, you have to look at a lot of data, right?
Because
I mean, some people see the future; they just see it like it's a television show in the back of
Yeah.
their eyelids, right? That's not me. Okay, so when I say I could see the future, I see things happening that give me indications about, you know, where things are going, right? Like, you know, you could say, looking back in the past, would we ever build a Panama Canal? Some people would say, yeah, absolutely. That makes the most sense of anything in the world, right? And to me, Dan, the future makes sense, right? You look at things to say, does it make sense that we should cure disease? Uh-huh.
Yeah, that would make sense,
Yeah.
yeah.
Does it make sense that we should end war? Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Should we have like a deep and secure social safety net? Yeah, that's good for people.
if we so it's interesting to me because if we end war and we cure disease, that takes away that where are we going to reallocate all of those resources? Because that is a lot of resources that we use on both those things:
Right.
time,
Yeah.
energy, actual resources, money. Obviously, like there's a ton in those two things.
Okay. I'm going to predict the future. Okay. In fact, I'm going to say with a high degree of confidence, I actually see it right now, as plain as day. There will be a flourishing of the arts. Okay.
Certainly, entertainment.
I would say the arts in general: literature, painting, sculpture, music. Right.
Like another age renaissance.
Yeah, absolutely, but a renaissance that will blow away. Like you can't even conceive what what the art and
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that Renaissance would look like. I cannot see that future. I can't get that detail. But I this is what I believe is going to happen. The second thing is space exploration and full-time permanent colonization. Okay? I think those two things are going to happen.
Those definitely could happen. Now, let me be contrarian. Let me be contrarian this time. All right, so we eliminate disease.
Mm-hmm.
Technology is moving forward. Everything is going great. There's a sticking point, though, because the technology for eliminating disease is a really hot topic and fought over. Mm-hmm. So now war is inevitable over this technology or group of technologies, right? Because technology in war is so high level, and we have like just mass destruction weapons, all sorts of things, we fight each other to almost extinction, and we put the human race back thousands of years.
Are you predicting the future?
I'm predicting a path of the future.
Okay, a possible future.
A possible future.
Yeah.
And I think that anything has, and both ways that you just said are both human behaviors that have happened in history, right? Mm-hmm. So we've had jumps where a lot of wars, like a lot of conflict has slowed down a little bit anyway, and we've eliminated some major diseases, right? Mm-hmm. We've had some big medical breakthroughs, allowed people to live better lives and not just like try to survive, right? And then they had a renaissance of art and entertainment and science and all sorts of stuff, right? And then you've also had the opposite, where wars have ripped through the land, and then disease has followed shortly afterwards. Yeah. And then human race was the Dark Ages, right?
Yeah. So we always talk about following the money. And I think when it comes to like healthcare and longevity and disease, there's a lot of money on the table right now.
There is a lot of money on the table.
Yeah. So that maybe that's a whole nother podcast, because I still have two more things on the list.
Well, if we eliminated disease, then that would cost a lot of companies an awful lot.
Yeah,
like
it would.
An awful lot.
Yeah, it would.
And I do think there are some entities that would not want that to happen.
Yeah. In fact, I've had 35 years of direct experience on that topic.
I think we should have a podcast on that, because that would be very interesting.
You know, Dan, I'd like to take this format and flip it on its head. How about we do a podcast where you hit me cold with some questions, some burning issues, right?
Okay.
Because I do that to you all the time, right? And you love it. But I would do the same, right? I'd be happy to try and be nimble on my feet in the face of your questions.
Okay.
So can we table that one again?
We can table that one.
Because we'll be 2 hours into the podcast here, just scratching the surface.
And right now we're like 31 minutes in, if I'm exactly right. 31 minutes and 20 seconds. Probably exactly right. No. I know.
36 minutes. Okay. Yesterday, Agro Hut.
Agro Hut.
Okay. I love that term.
Love that term.
Because I love taglines, right? I love taglines.
Who doesn't?
And I love micro narratives.
Okay.
I've never heard anybody even use the term micro narrative.
I haven't either. So I'm excited about it.
If I made it up, I made it up this morning, right?
Okay.
Micro narratives. So I think this is really fun. And yeah, perhaps it's reductive. Perhaps we should beware of taglines and micro narratives. But they're fun.
No, not taglines, just labels. Okay. Not taglines or micro narratives.
Right. So like,
it's gotta call them something different.
So I had a tagline that I used for years professionally. It was like my tagline on my LinkedIn account and my Twitter account and other social media. It was the Pharma Pro with a punk rock past.
That's awesome.
Right. And that was my tagline. And that helped me create an identity for myself, like a professional identity. And that tagline was like an anchor or a grounding, a foundation that I could build myself on, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, like, Agro Hut, right? That's not quite a tagline, but you could easily build. Well, you've got stuff about MadLab, right? You've got like little phrases that you say about MadLab, and I don't know what they are, but
I'd like more of them though.
Yeah, and so I would encourage people to do that. Like, and then I built out my tagline. I was like, relentless prototyping, early adoption, early abandonment, things like that, right? And again, those things informed my decision-making process. They informed my professional presentation. They informed how I marketed myself to other people, or how I manipulated, how I persuaded people. And that was, and I think it's true. I think it's still spot on. I do feel that way, right?
Yeah.
To this day. So, beware if you don't have a tagline. Okay.
I need a tagline.
You need a tagline, Dan.
Well, what the hell?
Well, let's work on that.
Yeah,
right? Let's work on that. Right?
I'd love a tagline.
Because like, what do we say about this podcast, right? We're like, I remember, and I'm actually setting up my last question of the day, right? From dinner to world domination, we teach you how to win hard.
That's right.
That is a tagline. That is a worthy tagline,
That's
Dan.
a good one.
It's super, right? Because it's easy to remember, right? You won't get lost in the jumble of trying to explain who you are, like Pharma Pro with a punk rock past.
Yeah.
It's catchy, it's easy, and it's true.
Thanks.
Okay? So we should think about that more. And I think that especially kids, young people that are starting out their careers and like trying to establish themselves and cement their identity. Maybe not cement. I mean, that's too inflexible. But to clarify, right? To clarify who they are and what they represent. I think that's super important. And it also helps with the labeling problem, right? Like nobody will say, there goes Alex, the Pharma Pro with a punk rock past. That's too complicated of a label, but it's a very simple tagline, and it avoids people saying, oh, there goes Alex, the boomer who voted for Trump, or there goes Alex, the fat slob, or whatever, right?
Right.
Right. It helps clarify that identity thing. So
fair enough.
So beware.
Beware.
This is not a warning. It's more of an encouragement or a suggestion or something.
Well, I think
Get
it's just
tagline.
Get a tagline is almost like also get a purpose.
Yeah.
Right? I think that, and we talked about that before, and I think a lot of people kind of flow through life going through the day-to-day all the time.
I never thought of that.
You did, I guess.
No, I mean, purpose. Like, my purpose. I am a pharmaceutical professional.
Yeah, you gave
right?
yourself an identity, and then it also like fueled a lot of the ways that you acted in
with a
what you
punk
do.
rock past. Like, I'm going to challenge you on stuff. I'm not going to accept it.
Especially authority.
Especially authority.
And that's near and dear to Daniel's heart. I'll tell you that for sure.
Right? Okay, so there you go. There's an opportunity, and beware the missed opportunity, perhaps. Okay, and now here's the zinger that I've been trying to set up all podcast all week long.
I'm excited.
Okay? Our tagline is that we're going to teach you how to win hard.
Yeah.
What does winning actually look like? And while you're twisting that around in your head, like I had a factory that I went to one time, and it was notoriously poor performing. And we were talking with like peers and people that were familiar with the situation, and the consensus was, they're trying so hard, but they don't even know what good looks like.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, it's easy to, like, when we say, oh, we're winning, right? Or it's time to win, I get concerned. Maybe that's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
I think that's fair, but if I had to look at one thing of what it would mean, I think that it's a lot of things that we talked about on the podcast.
Okay.
Already, right? So it would be like, you have found your place in society.
Okay, right.
You are cemented there, and people know what your role is. You know what your role is, and you are very happy with your role. You know that you're great at it. You know it serves society well, and society also knows that. And I think that is what winning and winning hard looks like. There's a lot of things that feed into that.
Okay.
For sure. For example, you have to know what you're good at, what you're bad at.
Okay.
And you have to put yourselves in positions where what you're good at, you're going to do more often, and you're also going to use that to help the people around you.
Mike, I hope somebody's writing this down, because this is gold.
I don't know if it's gold, but I think that is like the most important thing. And I think that many people end up not happy because they just do what they think they're supposed to do.
Right.
They may or may not be good at it, or they might not be passionate about it, or they might be better than the people around them at it, but they're still not really high level at it, and they're not passionate about it. Yeah. So they're gonna be it's going to be a waste of efficiency and a waste of potential. And they're always going to know that. I feel like you're always going to feel when you're losing and leaking potential. Entropy.
Leaking potential.
Yeah.
I love that. Leakage. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So, I think it's important, Dan, that you say those things, because winning isn't something that just happens.
No.
Winning is like the effect of a huge
At least 4 episodes of the podcast. I would say.
Well, okay, so to me, winning looks like something in particular, right? Like, I come in here some days and I am so full of like mutant rage, right?
I know.
That I just want to run
all
through
throughout
walls.
the week.
I just want to run through walls. And even yesterday when I basically like arrived in a body bag, you unzipped the bag, you manipulated me a little bit, and pretty soon we started unlocking some of that rage, like throwing that ball against the wall. I mean, I felt it. I felt like I was winning at that point.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this guy Kevin Doyle, who's willing to hurt himself permanently to get what he wants. Right? That's
a wild.
Now,
I love that saying, but I don't know how willing I am.
I'm not.
Permanently is tough.
I'm not. But Dan, to me, winning. I don't quite always know what winning is, but I know that if I work really hard at it, I'll get closer to it, right?
Yes.
And so I am willing to come into the performance lab, and I am willing to hurt myself temporarily to get what I want, right? And even so, like, okay, that's predicting the future. I know if I do it long enough, I will achieve all of my fitness and mobility goals that I'm after, right? But I also know that in the very short term, I will walk out of here knowing that I left all of my aggro in the aggro hut where it belongs, instead of taking it to the street. And
take it to the street.
And because
sometimes you gotta take it to the street.
So so that's a nuanced thing about winning. And you said, it's different for every person. You have to know what it is that you want, and you have to know what you're after, and you need to have a little bit of a roadmap. And if you have those things,
which is what formal schooling should do for our children, which it doesn't, and that also drives me nuts. So that should be, I think, that part in specifically would be what a big part of middle school would be for. Right? Is figuring out that roadmap so that you can start to get more specialized as you get into high school and college.
Yeah.
But they don't. And then you don't in high school, and then you don't really in college. You sort of do in college, and then you're left and you're in your early mid-20s. And for a lot of people, that's kind of a disaster because they're just in something that they're not supposed to be in. And that's why you have that's one of the big reasons people have midlife crises.
Dan, I feel the same as you do on that one. I am just so thankful that I had my midlife crisis when I was like 19, right? And I got it all out of my system.
Mine was from probably 19 to 28.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah. So
it might still be going on.
So you maybe to wrap things up, Dan. I like the concept of like what is winning is like way too big to completely unbundle in the last 5 minutes of the episode, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. If I were a betting man, I'd say we have at least half a dozen things now that we want to come back to and do a whole nother podcast episode on. But I think it's important that, like my kids at the factory, they didn't know what good was. Nobody had ever showed them, right? And I think it's helpful sometimes when we talk about winning and winning hard.
Yeah.
It's helpful to have a sit down with people and say, what is it that you want to win at, right? Right? Like, right now, Dan, I'm not invested in being like the greatest bass fisherman that ever lived, right?
Yeah.
Like fishing is just not an important goal for me, right?
Not one for me either. I love being on the water. I like drinking beers on the water.
Right.
And those things I'm very good at.
Yeah.
So I will be there with a rod in the water, but I'm not much of an accomplished fisherman.
So it's always time to win, Dan.
Always.
But I am really, really looking forward to the next time we sit down and say, what exactly is winning? What does it look like? Because I think we know how to do it.
I'd like to change my definition. At least 5 episodes.
Okay.
I would say.
All right.
At least 5 episodes of Time to Win.
So
We'll
we
get you
usually close with you asking me what time is it, and I say it's time to win, but I'm not sure it actually works this time. So how do we close this one today?
Well, you know what? It all comes back to where are we going?
Yeah, Dan, I just want to, okay, now I've got the closing tagline. Dan, beware, because we are going straight to the top, baby.
Straight to the top,
Straight to
baby.
the top.
Always. Thank you, everybody.